Thank you very much. My name's Dave Morris. I'm the college counselor and CEO of College Athletic Advisor. And today we're doing a session called All Things ID Camp, what prospective student athletes, families, advisors need to know about recruiting camps, combines, and other special events, primarily pay-to-play ones. So that's kind of what we're talking about right now. I want to thank you. As I've said before we turned the recording on, we had 197 people register. So there's a smaller group that's representative that's watching, participating live, and I really appreciate it. And I've encouraged them off camera, and I'm going to say it again, to interrupt and ask questions as they arise. I think it'll make for a better presentation. We're going to do about 15 minutes, and then we're going to have some question and answer. So it should be nice and brief and to the point. So I want to start by talking about what I mean when I talk about ID camps. And what I mean are really, you'll see them marketed as like an ID camp, an elite camp, a prospect camp. And they're either run, to me, the ID camps, when I think of an ID camp, it's run by a college. And a single college program runs a camp on their campus, usually for one day. They're aimed for and these are camps for high school students. They'll sometimes specify, 25, 26, 27 grads. So only sophomores, juniors, and seniors, or something like that. And they're at colleges. And when a college runs an ID camp, the NCAA has a couple of regulations. One of the big ones is they are only allowed to restrict attendance by age and by order of registration. So in other words, they can't recruit talented kids and say, no, you're not good enough, you can't come. That's a violation of NCAA rules. So I want to make sure people understand that. Being invited to an ID camp or getting a camp notice or finding out about an ID camp and registering, a school may say, oh, we've accepted you into our ID camp. Well, that's very nice, but all that means is they had an open registration spot and they took you. They're specifically not allowed to do any talent evaluation. I'm also including sort of college ID camps run by sports clubs or AAU basketball teams or some football association or any other. There's some places where the NESCAC soccer coaches, the coach at Amherst got some of his buddies together and they run soccer camps, and they've got several coaches working together. Basically, they have a business together and they're selling camp registration, okay? And the other thing about ID camps is, generally speaking, when they sell an ID camp, the communication and the advertising mimics authentic recruiting. So kid gets an email that says, Johnny, you have been identified as a soccer prospect, and we'd really like to have the opportunity to see you play, or, your whatever sport it is. And so we'd like you to come to our camp on our campus or in this environment, and they'll advertise, it's our college, or they'll advertise we have lots of coaches from lots of schools. That's another way of doing it. And so those types of things are ID camps. There are a couple of situations that are not ID camps, and I think it's really important to be able to communicate this to families. If you're talking about a program like an Olympic, like in rowing, they have an ODP program, or in soccer, there's different like national team camps and things. That's not an ID camp. I mean, that's literally an ID camp, but it's not what we're talking about. Those are based on ability. Basketball has, there's a Nike camp, an Adidas top camp, elite camp, where somebody's paying for those kids to go get training because they're in the very, very elite category. And that's a different thing. So one of the really good questions is, so this elite camp, like, do you pay to go? And if the answer is yes, then okay, you know what you're dealing with. The answer is no, they fly us for free to Colorado Springs and we play basketball. Okay, that's different. So we're not talking about that today, just to be very clear. Okay, these are the pay-to-play deals. So to me, the big challenge for families is really assessing authenticity, because good marketing makes these camp invites look like recruiting. And very often a kid will email a coach or tweet at a coach, and the coach will say, "Oh yeah, you should definitely. I'm really interested. You should come to our ID camp." All right. And so I want to share a couple things about that. The first one is there was a big article in The Athletic, if you get a chance to read it or you Google it, about how Texas spent like 2/3 or 3/4 of $1 million hosting 4 football recruits for a weekend. It was, even as a college coach who's familiar with football and what they're doing, it was breathtaking in its excess. And I will say, like, if you're a track kid and you're going to go visit, I don't know, Colorado Mesa, you don't, you're like, yeah, Texas spent $750,000, but CU Mesa is not going to do that, right? Fair enough. The issue is, how do you get from, okay, we want you to come here, we're going to spend $750,000, to like, we want you to come here, give us $200 to figure it out. I don't see that as being realistic most places. If I'm a college coach and I want you to come play for me, I want you to come visit. And money is not a barrier I want to put up, even if I'm at some place where I could probably get away with it. Because the kids who are going to make a difference in our program, if I'm at one of those schools, are the exact student athletes who will not respond to that. Okay. So just to be really clear, that's a big issue. And I think it's really incumbent upon students and families and sometimes consultants to assess the authenticity of these invites, because many times they will mimic recruiting. And also, post-COVID, coaches are under more pressure to raise money. The camp business got bigger. And the reality is, coaches will say, well, yeah, if you want me to look at you, I'm not going to get a chance to see you. You got to come to camp. And it's one of those, it's true, but it's deceptive. So let's be honest about it and talk about how you can assess that. I think there's 3 things that I think are great to do. One of them is ask them questions about the program and see if they respond. Don't ask them questions about you or how attractive you are, but just see if they are going to engage with you. If you ask them like, hey, I saw you have a camp and I'm curious about like what you think of, your guards for 2026 or whatever, or, what do you feel are the most important things for a guard to work on before I go to camp? Like, if they're really running a camp and they're selling camp registration, they may not be super responsive. And that's a good thing to know, because if they're not responsive, they're not really recruiting you. You're being recruited to camp. The second thing is, flat out, if you're not sure, hey, look, I don't know if I can make camp, but I'd love to visit campus. And if the coach ghosts you, now you're a camper recruit. You're not a college recruit, right? Don't take it personally. If they blow you off, they blow you off. That's the way it goes, but that's the deal. The third strategy is to just ask the coach, so where are you at in terms of recruiting your class for 2026 or whatever it is? And I think coaches, people tend to be, I know this is really hard in 2024. There is an industry and, people, we've discovered the power of falsity, I guess. But most people are pretty darn honest. And if you ask college coaches, where are you at? They'll tell you. You know what? We've only got one. We've recruited like 4 kids at your position and we may not have any more room. They'll tell you that. Or they'll say, yeah, we're actually, we haven't even started on 2027 yet. We're still doing 2026. Good to know. Right? You can also ask them, say, hey, I'm playing in this league and doing these things. And, how does that, like, what do you think? How do you think going to camp would benefit me? And how would going to camp allow you to better understand who I am? And, if the coach is not terribly responsive to those questions, I think you know where you stand. Because there's always a lot of, sometimes it's clarity. Sometimes coaches aren't super clear. A lot of times, I don't think clarity is the issue. I think the issue is that people want to believe they want to believe they're being recruited. And so they sell themselves. And these are, you can say like, look, you're not it. That's okay, but you're not it. the other part is, sometimes it pays to go to a recruiting camp. Okay. An ID camp could be a good fit if you're looking at a college that is not in your region, right? So if you're a California kid and you really want to play in the Ivy Leagues, and especially if you're a freshman or sophomore, might not be a bad idea. It's a fairly low cost way to get a really high quality tour of the college, meet the coaches, see the staff, and understand what you're really talking about if you haven't experienced it. So I like to talk about well, this is what you can buy and this is what you can't buy. Okay. So what people think they're buying with camp is like, well, maybe they'll recruit me and I'll get evaluated. Right. And a lot of time coaches will say, like, in our ID camp, we give you an evaluation. We give you a sheet that says like you're awesome or whatever. That's not a recruiting evaluation. I mean, it's an evaluation, but it's not really a recruiting evaluation. The recruiting evaluation is at the end of the camp. Do they recruit you? And the answer is, I think you need to send students. If you have a kid who's saying, hey, I'm going to go to this camp because I want them to recruit me, they need to understand if there's 100 kids at the camp, they need to be the top one kid. You need to be number one. Maybe if it's a really great camp, you could be 2 or 3. But you got to be, if you come back from camp, you're like, oh, I was as good as anybody there. I fit in fine. You are not going to get recruited. You're one of the people like that. You're not standing out. All right. And that's, if you want to get recruited out of an ID camp at all, think about it. Like if there's 100 kids there, they're not going to recruit 100 kids. You better be the top kid. Even if you're the top kid, and this is where I get concerned about the college side of it. One very selective school ran 3 ID camps in California a couple of years ago. So 150 kids, 3 times, recruited 0 kids out of those camps. Now, that coach is a smart coach. If someone had come into those camps and blown him away, he would have recruited them. But he had some really good players in those camps. All right. You got to really stand out. And also, I can't recommend to a kid attending a college ID camp at a remote site. If the main benefit is seeing the campus and meeting, and all you do is meet one coach, where you already live, there's better uses of your time. Fly out and visit the school. Do something different. Because the other thing you can buy is meeting the coach and meeting the players. And I think a smart student athlete, especially if you're a freshman and you're just trying to kind of figure out where you fit, you can look at those college students and you can decide, hey, man, that's what I want to look like when I grow up. And also, I look pretty much like them already. Or, hey, man, those people were like, they were way different from me. Okay, well, those are good things to know. Because you're not competing with the campers, you're competing with the kids who are already on the team. So, but you can meet the coaches and you could also go and be like, you know what, that coach was a jerk. I don't want to play for that guy. Awesome. That's a successful camp experience. Or, man, I love that coach. He was awesome. She was terrific. Well, then, even if you're not going to go there, maybe she's somebody you should ask about, hey, do you have suggestions about where I might be able to play or where I might be a good fit? Your search doesn't have to, it's not, you don't judge the success by camp or of a camp because that's where you went, right? It's, if it was a learning experience and you learned something, that's a winner. The other reason to go to camp is it's fun to play sports with the other students who aspire to similar things as you, right? Go meet them. Because one of the funny things, if you go to camp at Amherst and then you go to camp at Pomona Pitzer, I always think of them as Pomona Pitzer because it's one athletic department. They're the same kids. Literally, half the time, it's literally the same kids. So, that's kind of cool. All right. So I love this slide. I kind of mashed 2 slides together. The deal is you can't buy. What's for sale is an experience where you can kind of see the program a little bit and learn a little and meet some people. You cannot buy being recruited. You just can't. And I've had this, I had a parent the other day, like, well, what if I, you know, can I make a donation? I'm like, you'd have to build a building and it's cheaper to just take a PG year. Really. Uh, Couple things for advisors, all right? In terms of ID camps, one of the things is families need to manage their costs, right? Even if the tuition's cheap, it's $100, $150 for one of these one-day programs, depending on where you're going, it can add up pretty fast, right? If you got a flight in there and you got a hotel room and blah, 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 it adds up. And the events they're of low value. There are other things you can do with your money that would be better for your college search, better for your recruiting, better for your profile. So should you do a couple of these just to see schools and get to know? Absolutely. It's not a terrible idea. But know what you're buying, know where it fits in the process, and remember that every weekend that you spend doing this is a weekend you didn't spend doing something else. And that may be the biggest problem. Because the truth is, like if your choice is playing in Chicago at the AAU basketball thing, where all the coaches are going to be for live period or going to a camp, like the camp's the loser. Whoever's really recruiting is at the other thing. Right. Also, there's a tendency in 2024 America that more is better. And with camp, it's diminishing returns, right? More camps is not more up. If one is good, 20 is better, does not apply here. One or two is great. A bunch of them means you're missing the boat because there's a opportunity cost. So you need to think about what else you could do with your time. So let's chat. I was going to do 15 and 15 and I prattled on without interruption. You guys kind of missed the boat on that one. So, I did set aside time. I'd really like to have you, what are the burning questions? Because I'm getting a lot of camp questions and I want to hit as many as I can. You can raise your hand or something or not. I'm going to kill the screen. I guess what I should say is, you can see the website, collegeathleticadvisor.com, email, my cell number. Give me a call. I'm on the internet, 719-248-7994. Rings right here. Everybody thinks I'm playing around with them, but I'm not. Trying to figure out if camp has value. I think the reality is camp does have value if it depends what you want. If what you want is to see the school, meet the coaches, see who kind of else values that school, what those kids look like. It's a good value. If you're trying to buy getting recruited, it is a terrible value.
Dave?
Yeah.
I think the other thing you pointed out is that's really tough is that sometimes it does help with recruiting. And it's really hard for families to understand when it makes sense to do that. Like you're pointing out to like about a West Coast kid who wants to play in the Ivies. Those coaches aren't coming out here to see us.
Well, it depends. And I think there's other ways, but certainly,
Absolutely.
my most recent kid that I said, you probably ought to go. Some of the things when we get to where, this camp makes a lot of sense as a recruiting thing. I have a young woman so we could do case study. She's a soccer player in Boston. Her top school is the University of Chicago. Academically, she's a great fit, right? But Amy at Chicago has a recruited team and she's not interested in walk-ons particularly. So she said, look, I'm not going to see the events you're playing. You're not playing at a profile level where you're assured, where I'm like, yes, we'd love to have you. You're one of the top players in America. So you're pretty good. We've seen your film. We know you're pretty good. Like you could play here, but we don't know whether we really need you to give you a roster spot. So why don't you come to camp and we'll see what happens. And the kid understands it's not it's not a high percentage kind of thing. The coach looked at her and said, you could try to guest play at Surf where I'm going to be in California, but I might not see you anyway. And it's probably just as hard to impress me as a guest player as it is at camp. I don't think that's totally true. I think you have a better shot of impressing her as a guest player. But uh, you're not going to see the campus, and this young woman from Boston's never seen their campus. And she's not going to guest play at Surf. So Chicago's probably where it's at. So go to camp. There are situations, but I think they skew more toward freshmen and sophomores. If you're a junior and it's the spring or summer of your junior year and somebody's selling, Abilene Christian will sell you baseball camp right up until September after you've graduated. Okay? Like, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Like,
But I think
you can hand them a check.
the other piece of what you pointed out that's really important is that she's on the phone talking to this coach. This is
Yes.
not the email that you're trying to decode and figure out if it's sincere or not. You're having direct conversations.
Absolutely.
That's all.
And
I just want to
And when I
underline.
called to follow up with the coach, she said similar. I mean, we've known each other a long time, and she said similar things. She said, "Really, because I was like, if you don't think she's any good, let's save everybody some time." And the coach said, "I'm not trying to be a jerk. Like, I just don't know. I need to see her. She's kind of on the edge there." So, there's a chat question then, Catherine, we'll get to. For baseball, what I'm saying is Abilene Christian literally will email, if you email Abilene Christian and you're a senior, it's the spring of your senior year, they've signed their class, they're not recruiting anymore, and they will send you an email that says, hey, come to camp and we'll take a look at you. And I honestly think it's a little disgusting. All right, Catherine.
Hi. Could you talk a little bit about why the coaches feel so much pressure to bring in money from these camps and how they use it? Is it just like, so say it's a soccer coach, is it just all his money that he can do whatever he wants with in terms of the soccer athletic program at his college, or how does it work?
Or you can stick it in your pocket.
Oh, okay. That too.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly, like, so when I was a very young coach, a basketball coach, said, it's basically about money. The more money you have, the more you can, even if this is Division III, state college, everybody's got a budget, your classes, the schools are cheap, you're not giving out scholarships. Even there, it was like the more money you fundraise, the more you can go on the road and recruit, the more things you can do for the team, the better your recruiting, the better your facilities, the more stuff you can, there's always, as a coach, you're always like, I want to buy this piece of equipment or that one. And so there's a lot of incentive. And then post-COVID, every athletic department sat down with their coach and said, you jerks better raise some money, man. And that hasn't, they never back off of that. It's like, okay, great. Now you're at this level. What can we do to get you to even a higher level? It's pretty terrible. But anyway, so the coaches are under some pressure to do this. And I think also, like, there's a money spigot. Why should they let a bunch of bozos, like, there's a company, what is Exact Camps or whatever, and they pay like volunteer assistant coaches $100 to show up somewhere and do some blow off. Why shouldn't the college just make the money? Why should they let those clowns have it? So that's some of the theory as well. And the bigger and better your camps, the bigger and better your recruiting class. Look at all the kids you're seeing. Sort of. Mm-hmm. But that's the theory.
Okay, thanks.
Linda. Oh, no problem. Thanks, Kat.
Dave, you mentioned asking coaches questions. Do you think they're upfront about, let's specifically talk about hockey? Hey, coach, I'm rising junior. Let's say, do I go to juniors or do I go to boarding school, or, are you taking right out of high school? Do you think they're going to be?
I think asking a coach those types of questions gets you really good answers. There's no benefit to them to lying to you. I mean, also, coaches, look, if you're a college coach and you lie to somebody, now they're wandering around knowing you lied to them. So
what's up?
Hang on, we're gonna. There we go. All right. So the deal is, like, those are good questions to ask because coaches have expertise in that area. They see kids. they'll tell you, listen, on our roster of 30 hockey players, 27 of them played in juniors. 5 of them aged out of juniors and then did a prep year. I mean, so they'll tell you kind of what the pathway is for their program or how they see it. And they won't take them long to figure out who your kid is, and then they can be fairly specific. If they blow you off, they're telling you better play juniors because I'm not interested at all right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Specifically for hockey. Most college hockey players play juniors. And there's 6 divisions of juniors, and the colleges really only recruit out of 2 of them.
All right, thank you.
No problem. Ann's asking, what about summer camps after junior year? I think it depends on your goals. Like summer of junior year, it depends what you're trying to accomplish. It's certainly, some sports more than others, but I think it's more about who you are, where you are in your conversations with coaches. Also, sometimes it pays. I have students who are not going to end up playing Ivy League, whatever, and they really I'm like, go to the camp, go see them, see how the other half lives. And they come back and they're like, I was as good as those kids. And I'm like, great, but they're not. Did they talk to you afterwards? No. Did they? Okay, then can we now get serious? Let's go find some school that looks like Hogwarts, but also takes kids who have a 3.7 GPA. I'm a fan. So, or God, even lower. But and that doesn't mean that an Ivy League school, Ivy hockey, they'll go plenty lower. But they don't if they don't have to. So any other, I'm here. Here's your big chance. Out of 200 people, you're in the final 16.
Can you call it the Sweet 16, or is that trademarked?
No, I think you can. You got to be able to ride a broomstick. I don't know if you got to sit on the broomstick if you want to play at Hogwarts. But but you can play, if you play Quidditch at Columbia, you just have to run around with a broom between your legs. So
I have another question.
Yes.
Let's say a kid has gone to, I don't know, a number of camps over their junior year, not getting any interest from coaches. What would you advise them to do at that point? Like, should they email the coach really directly and say, are you?
Well, you can. I think if they're not getting a lot of interest and they're a senior now or going to be a senior, I think, there's basically, I look at it as you hit an inflection point. September, October of senior year, you got to make some choices. Are you going to expand your options school-wise? Maybe you've stayed too tight. You don't have enough options, right? You need to say, because one of the things, what can we do? Should we email them again? I'm what do you do if you're trying, if you're going to prom, right? And a girl says no, you're going to follow around for a while, see if the police show up? At some point, find a better girl or find a better guy. That one's not it. They're not going with you. And that's okay. And I think you can expand that way. You can also say, academically, I think those schools are a fit. So I'm not really that interested in, going in another direction. Maybe it's time to talk about intramurals or whatever. Athletics isn't going to get you in, but if you're a good student, they're in the school business first, right? But I think, or there's other paths, if I had a client who just wouldn't compromise. I want to play in the Ivy League. There's only 8 schools in the whole world I'm willing to go to. And so he did a post-grad year, and now he's playing basketball at Brown. There's a path if you want to get there. But the other thing is, I think you've got to look at, what are you doing now? How does your profile not align with what they're looking for? Because clearly you've done the pay for play thing. It's not working. Who are they recruiting? And are you willing to do the work to get there? Because it's not like you're a widget. You came stamped out of the factory. You could get bigger, stronger, or whatever it is, like play at a different level. You could do that. What's that look like? Does that make sense? I mean, there's more.
Yeah.
I think you have a lot of options, but I think part of it is, hey, they're kind of telling you that you're not it at that school. So like, we need to look around.
Mhm.
Did I hit the right? I mean, I want to make sure I got there.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. Yeah, I think you've got to either expand your college list, expand your kind of like levels that you'll accept, varsity, sub-varsity, club, intramural, whatever, or you've got to decide you're going to change your profile. Because right now there's like a mismatch. So Phil asked on the chat, what are you really, Phil, you got to jump in and explain that one to me, because that's a track website where they have times and stuff. What do you mean? You got to unmute though.
The track site's athletic.net.
Oh, okay, no, used it for a tracksuit. Yeah. Athlete.net it's got times on it. Athletic.net. Yeah. There's that one in Mile Split. They're great because coaches can look up your times. But they're not really, there's like in swimming, there's USA Swim, but there's also Swim Cloud. And they're great because they're not recruiting websites, they're data. That's like you swim, you touch the thing, and like that time goes on the internet and coaches can see it. It's awesome. As a soccer coach and basketball coach, like the idea that you don't have to like figure it out, there's like a data point, is fabulous. Love it. It's why basketball, soccer, stuff like that are harder. So, getting ready to wrap it up. Does anybody have one? If you got your last big question you were sitting on, even if it's not totally about ID Camp, you can send it to the world right now. All right, we tired everybody out. It's Friday night. Listen, I want to thank you. It's my pleasure to do this, and I appreciate you. This was a little bit of an experiment. I've never done one of these. And I want to thank you for being a part of